Ladies and gentlemen, if I can have your attention, please. My name is Jeff Klein, and I have the honor of being the director of the Consortium for Robotics, Unmanned Systems, Education, and Research. I welcome you today to the second annual Robots in the Roses. A little bit over a year ago today, we kicked off CRUSER and the Consortium with this very event. And we've increased both in numbers and in variety of people who are displaying all aspects of unmanned systems, from technical to ethical, from concept generation to experimentation. Today I have the honor of introducing the father of CRUSER, the one who came to NPS and came up with the concept, and then later chartered us. I like to say he gave me my letter of marque to go forth and do and hold and create the consortium as it is. I'd like to introduce the Undersecretary of the Navy, the Honorable Robert Work. Bob Work was confirmed as the Undersecretary of the Navy on May 19, 2009. In this capacity, he serves as the Deputy and Principal Assistant to the Secretary of the Navy and acts with full authority of the Secretary in the day-to-day management of the Department of Navy. Mr. Work is a former Marine Colonel who faithfully served for 27 years. During this time, he held a wide range of command leadership and management positions. Most important for those Army and Marines, he was a Red Leg. He commanded an artillery battery and artillery battalion and was the base commander at Camp Fuji, Japan. His last assignment was the military assistant and senior aide to the Honorable Richard J. Danzig, the 71st Secretary of the Navy. After retiring from the Marine Corps, Mr. Work joined the Center for the Strategic and Budgetary Assessments, or CSBA, first as a senior fellow for maritime affairs and later as the vice president for strategic studies. In these positions, he is focused on defense strategy and programs, revolutions in war, Department of Defense transformation, and maritime affairs. Please welcome the father of CRUSER, Robert O. Work.
I spoke to the student body a little bit before, and I was explaining that the Undersecretary of the Navy is the Chief Operating Officer of the Department of the Navy. And you don't really know what the job is like until you get into the job. And I explained that on my first day, there was a little envelope on my desk, and I opened up the envelope and it said, "Description of the Undersecretary's duties, see tethered goat in Jurassic Park." I don't get to get out of the Pentagon very often. And when I do, it's a treat. But coming out here, wow, what a venue. I mean, I almost feel like breaking into Don't Cry For Me, Argentina, the music and everything. But thank you all for being here today. It's just a wonderful, lovely afternoon as we celebrate the second annual Robots in the Roses Research Fair. This research fair gives us just a fascinating hint of the wide array of research that is currently going on in unmanned systems, and a vitally important and exponentially growing realm of these systems, and just a small glimpse of what we might see in the future. The Robots in the Roses is sponsored, as Jeff said, by the Naval Postgraduate School. It's a consortium for robotics and unmanned systems education and research. You all know it as CRUSER. It was founded in February 2011 as an alum of the Naval Postgraduate School. I knew that this would be the logical place to have a program which really tried to bring together concept development, research, and experimentation to try to show the Navy and the Marine Corps team the way forward in unmanned systems. So it was tasked to shape generations of naval officers through education, research, concept generation, and experimentation in the maritime application of robotics, automation, and unmanned systems. Now, when I came out here, this is what I kind of think of unmanned systems. This reminds me so much of the late 1940s and the early 1950s. In 1945, the U.S. Navy was on the receiving end of the first mass salvos of guided missiles in history, the kamikaze attacks that occurred off of Okinawa. Now the guidance systems were human beings, but in essence, these were guided missiles launched from far over the horizon of the fleet. And this was a fleet that had solved the problem of taking care of level bombing, dive bombers, and torpedo bombers. By 1944, that really wasn't a threat. But 14% of every kamikaze got through the defenses of the fleet and struck a ship. 34 ships were sunk. Another 350 or so were damaged. It was the most losses the U.S. Navy ever had in its history. What the Navy started thinking about was, how do we solve this problem? And they started thinking about guided weapons. And this started an entire revolution in the way of thinking about naval warfare. And interestingly enough, each of the different communities approached the problem differently. The three communities that really went after guided weapons were the communities that had to shoot at a target that moved freely in 3 dimensions. Aerial defenders, like fleet aerial defenders, they wanted surface-to-air missiles. Anti-submarine warfare guys were trying to fight against deep-diving nuclear submarines, and their depth charge just wouldn't work anymore. So they went after guided weapons. And then air-to-air fighters, people who had to shoot down other airplanes. All of them went after it. But there were other communities that didn't get it. The air-to-ground community didn't really go after air-to-ground guided weapons until well into the Vietnam War. That entire decade was about thinking. It was about developing concepts. It was about developing new ways of warfare, experimentation. And that's exactly where we are in unmanned systems. I think we're way, way, way far ahead in unmanned aerial systems, but we have a world to go in unmanned underwater systems, in unmanned surface vehicles, etc. So appropriately, then, CRUSER's vision is from technical to ethical, from concept generation to experimentation. That's exactly what we need to kind of tell us where we're headed. It provides a collaborative environment and community of interest. All of you here are part of that community for the advancement of unmanned systems education and research across the entire Navy Marine Corps team and the entire Department of Defense. So reflecting the hard work of Jeff and all of the members of CRUSER, in less than a year and a half, this community has grown to over 550 members, many of who are represented here today. So the job of this community is pretty simple. It rationalizes and guides the research, education, and experimentation efforts in unmanned systems across the entire naval enterprise, in space, in the air, on the sea, under the sea, on the ground, under the ground. It goes into unmanned systems architectures, design, system controls, power sources, sensors, human capital resources and requirements, and systems risk analysis. The hard kind of grunt work we need to kind of tell us the future and which future we ought to pursue. That's just one of many of the broad-based efforts that CRUSER is doing. Many of you here are from the 10th annual International Mine Warfare Symposium, which kicked off Monday right down the road at the Embassy Suites. And they have also, in unmanned systems, they're like the people who, in 1950s, they needed to shoot against targets that moved in 3 dimensions. You don't want to put a sailor in a minefield. So there is an extraordinarily big demand for unmanned systems in mine countermeasures. I'm sure that hopefully that this technology continuum spurred some more innovative thinking and more ways to go after this very problem that we face. As you can see then, CRUSER was envisioned as one of the key first steps in getting this application because it was designed to get specific communities excited about the possibilities and to explore them more fully. It's just one part, although a very, very important part, of the Navy's broader initiative on unmanned systems. The goal of this, besides just proliferating unmanned systems throughout the Navy Marine Corps team, is to develop, nurture, and support the institutional culture that demands these systems, because that is the key. To help achieve this culture, we have established a Navy Marine Corps human capital and training strategy for unmanned systems. By the end of this year, we hope to have a human capital management processes that include accession goals, career progression milestones, and allow us to track unmanned systems experts in both the Navy and Marine Corps. We also hope to finish a training strategy that identifies facilities that can maximize joint efficiencies in basing and manning of unmanned systems. You probably all know that we have an agreement with the Air Force so that we can have common joint landing and recovery elements that can take either a BAMS, a broad area maritime surveillance, or an Air Force global hawk, anywhere in the world. That's the kind of thinking we need, because in this fiscal environment, we have to help each other. By next year, we hope to identify the critical knowledge, skills, and abilities required for operating unmanned systems. Do you need to have a rated pilot to take care of a fire scout? Or could it be a non-rated individual, a warrant officer? Those are the type of things we need to know, and decide what type of core curriculum we need to support the development of the next generation of unmanned system experts. We also hope to develop a strategy to process, exploit, and disseminate the humongous amount of data that we can glean from unmanned systems. Unmanned systems are often said they do the dull, dirty, and dangerous. They can just go out and suck up data. We're going to have means to manage this data and give us information that is of relevance to our warfighters. The CRUSER facilitates all these efforts by aligning our research, both internal and external, to the Naval Postgraduate School, facilitating collaboration in venues like this, and especially among researchers and educators, and supporting innovation through directed programs of operational experimentation. Half of you here today, less than half of you actually, are from the Naval Postgraduate School. That to me is the mark of a very successful effort. And what Jeff is trying to do is to continually grow this consortium. So working in partnership with other organizations, CRUSER also coordinates the insertion of robotics and unmanned systems into joint experiments. We have to do more experimentation. We have to free up the time to do so. I worry about that we don't do it enough, but this is one way, and I think CRUSER is doing a great job. And the other thing that's very, very important to me is I know, coming from the Naval Postgraduate School, that the service's operational needs are always in the forefront of the CRUSER leaders and thinkers. So it's a very, very active partner, and is going to be a very effective educator for our future military leaders and decision makers. By helping to refine existing courses of education and design new academic programs, CRUSER will also be a unique and indispensable resource for our Navy Marine Corps team, and both support and highlight the educational missions of this institution that I truly love, the Naval Postgraduate School. In my view, NPS is the ideal organization, the best organization to align the Department of Navy's disparate unmanned systems research efforts. The fleet is running flat out. There's really not a lot of time to do thinking in the fleet on things outside of the day-to-day business of what we do for our nation. NPS, that's their job. They're in an academic environment that allows them the freedom to think about this. It's a leader, and a respected leader among DoD labs and unmanned systems research and experimentation, and it is an established and extensive and deep contact throughout the global unmanned systems community of interest. So this ROSES Research Fair, Robots in the ROSES Research Fair, is just, in my view, one of the many, many great things that CRUSER is doing, and exactly what I envisioned when I asked Jeff to take this on. In a like way, today's research fair offers interest and opportunity to share their interest in areas of unmanned systems. There's over 30 exhibitors from academia, industry, and the greater DoD community. Thank you all for coming here this afternoon and sharing your work and being a part of this. It's also an opportunity for our NPS students to explore potential theses on topics, and a way to inspire youngsters. High school, study science, technology, engineering, math, and zero. So thank you for your time. Thank you for your efforts. The Secretary of the Navy and I appreciate everything that you're doing for our nation, and I look forward to talking to you later this afternoon. Thank you very much.